Okay, I think we might be able to get started since we have a decrease in people coming in, but I'm just going to go ahead and translate one more time in Spanish. So, bienvenidos a la sesión de iReady esta noche. Si ocupan traducción en español, hay un globo abajo de la pantalla. Puede seleccionar allí, luego selecciona el idioma de español y de allí los va a llevar a un cuarto separado donde la señorita Gloria les va a poder traducir la presentación directamente en español. All right. Dr. Nayo, if you'd like to kick us off.
Thank you, Nancy. Welcome, everybody, and we're so happy to have you here this evening. This is our third and final meeting for this series and our family session for iReady for this year. The first one, for those of you who were here for the first one, remember we talked about just getting ready for the diagnostic, what the diagnostic was, what can you expect from it. The second one that we had was after the diagnostic one, and that one really talked about looking at the data, understanding how you access your students' data on the platform, and just kind of understanding what we kind of went over growth measures and things on that one. But this one, now we actually get to see the growth from diagnostic 1 to diagnostic 2. What we can see is we'll see the growth between what your students did in diagnostic 1, between diagnostic 2, and how teachers use this data to continue the learning and teaching in the classroom, and what this means for you as a parent and how you can interpret it, and the reports that you can get for that. Tonight, we have Paige Crumby from Curriculum Associates to give us this wonderful presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Paige.
Good evening, Pasadena Unified families and parents. I'm happy to be with you this evening to share a little bit more about your students' iReady diagnostic data and how you might be using that data to support your student success this year. So I'd like to go ahead and start our presentation. And during our presentation, I am using a second screen. So if you don't see me looking directly into the camera, I'm just looking at my second screen here. I will be sharing some links in the chat. So if you are on a mobile device or a cell phone and you do have access to the chat, please feel free to access those directly through the chat and save them. If not, if you don't have access tonight, you can, I believe they will be shared by the district in a follow-up email. So please be on the lookout for those links and documents, as well as the translation in Spanish as well. We'll go ahead and get started, jumping into our iReady family session. So our outcomes, we have a few on the screen, and I'll read over them just in case anyone is listening and following along. So by the end of our session, you should be able to say, I can explain what iReady is and how the program can support student learning. I can understand how the iReady adaptive diagnostic works. I can identify resources available to families in supporting their students. And I can understand how iReady personalized instruction works. And we'll talk a little bit about learning things, and we'll also examine diagnostic growth. So we have an agenda here. We're here for a little bit of time together. So I went over some of these items here, and then we also see that we have a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions already in mind, you can go ahead and pop them in the chat. They may be able to be answered by our district partners here. And if not, you can hold off until our Q&A at the end. So we'll talk a little bit more about the overview. I won't go too deep here because it sounds like you all had some previous sessions about what iReady is and what you can do with iReady. So I won't spend a lot of time here, but I will go through it just in case this is anyone's first time joining us this evening. So what is iReady? It is a diagnostic assessment that gives us insight into K-12 skills and really pinpoints students' specific level of need or support. After that, it creates a goal for the students. We have a typical and a stretch growth goal. And that goal is either going to move students towards proficiency if they need to close a gap, or if they're already at proficiency, moving towards advanced proficiency. After that, the teacher gets a robust amount of reports, and the students receive personalized online lessons based on their level. So it's not everybody getting the same lesson. It is personalized just for your student. And then, as I mentioned, the teachers get a robust amount of resources to support individual and small group instruction, as well as whole group instruction. So that's working with the whole class, or working with maybe 3 to 5 students at a time, or even working with a student individually. Our reports go down all the way down to individual. So you may have seen those reports during conferences or any other time you may have met with your teachers and educators at your schools. Those reports are all put together in one place called iReady Central. So I'd like to take a moment to play a quick video for you all, just to go over what iReady is, what the diagnostic is, keeping in mind that your students have taken more than one diagnostic this year. Each time they take the diagnostic, it picks up where they left off. They've more than likely taken it at least 3 times this year. If not, there's one more upcoming. In between those diagnostics are those personalized instruction lessons. And all of those lessons that are just for your student are designed to prepare them for success on the next diagnostic. And ideally, we want to see growth. So if you keep your eyes on the screen, I'm going to hop over to a video and I'm going to play that. Hopefully everyone's volume is up and they can hear.
Hi, my name is Mark Bernstein. I'm a National Director at Curriculum Associates, and we are the iReady people. For the student, iReady serves 2 functions. Number 1, it's an online diagnostic assessment that pinpoints math and reading skills down to the sub-skill level. And number 2, it's online learning that caters to a student's specific needs, whether those needs are on, above, or below level. In a moment, I will share a link with you that leads to another video that offers more detailed information. But for now, I'd like to share 4 things you need to know about iReady. Number 1, the iReady online assessment is adaptive in nature. This means that students see questions based on how they're performing. If a student struggles, the questions get easier. If a student is breezing through, the questions become more challenging. Once a student completes the diagnostic, the teacher will know exactly what the student needs, so it eliminates the necessity to overtest our children, thus allowing more time for teaching. Number 2, the iReady online instruction is personalized to the individual. Once a student completes the diagnostic, his or her results will differ from classmates. So we give each student their own pathway based on diagnostic results. If the student needs help with reading comprehension, that student will get lessons to help. If the student has geometry skills above grade level, that student will receive geometry content that's above grade level. Support for those who have gaps to fill, enrichment for those who are exceeding grade level expectations. Number 3, iReady is not a grading tool. Your child won't get an A or C- based on how they perform in iReady. iReady supports students, challenges students, gives students math and reading content that is right at their level. iReady helps children to grow, but it is not used to assign grades. And number 4, iReady is not designed to replace the teacher. In every school district, teachers are an irreplaceable asset. iReady supports teachers by helping group students with similar needs for targeted instruction, what we call differentiation. Once small groups are established, iReady's teacher toolbox is just one of the many resources that teachers may use to provide targeted instruction. But replace the teacher? Never. If you can spare 7 minutes, please visit the link on your screen to learn more about iReady and the role it plays in your child's education.
I want to pause here on the screen, just in case anybody wants to grab that link there or take a screenshot of the device that they might be using. And I'll also share the link in the chat. All righty. All righty. I just shared the link in the chat to our family center, which is the link that he referenced right at the end of the video. And I want to make sure that I navigate there for you so I can kind of point out some resources there. All right. You may be familiar with the iReady Family Center. And this iReady Family Center, it can be accessible through your students dashboard. So actually, let me hop over there and show you how to get there. If you are in your students dashboard, it looks something like this. And your students log in through, and I want to clarify with the district, how do the students log in? Do they log in through the district portal, or do they have a direct link to the iReady Connect website? If so, I think someone's in the chat. If someone from the district could chime in. Now I am in the student account. So if you are in your student's account from home and you've logged in from home, at the top right corner, we have something called the iReady Family Center. And there I want to point out that you have different resources that you have available to you. And I want to note that I shared a link with you for the Ready Classroom Mathematics Family Center. And I want to clarify with the district right now, it looks like you all are logging in through Clever.
Yeah.
And then the Ready Classroom Mathematics Family Center, is that an okay link to share, or would you all prefer for the just iReady? I know that you all are using Ready Classroom Mathematics as well.
Yes, we are. So that's okay to share them.
Perfect. So I did share the iReady Classroom Mathematics link in the chat, and that is the direct link to our mathematics curriculum. So there are a lot of resources that you can use here with your students at home, understanding the curriculum and what it's composed of. So I want to point out something right here, which is the Try, Discuss, Connect framework. Your students experience the Try, Discuss, Connect framework throughout their mathematics instruction. And this framework actually is how the teachers teach the students through the lens. So you can find out more about how your students are learning our curriculum here under Find Out More. And then over to the right, at the bottom of this Family Center page, we have math discourse cards. And if you open this link up, you'll see there are cards that help our students further and deeper understand the mathematics equations and problems that they're encountering during their lessons, but even at home. So these are resources that you can use to support your students being able to explain their thinking, make sense and understanding their problems, being able to reason and explain and critique with their work. So this is a very valuable resource to really help your students hone in on the instruction that's happening in school and then connecting it to home. And then there's also a link here, how can I support my student at home, right in the middle. And we have several resources here, including a thinking mat for math sense makers, and a family guide. And if you are working with your student at home on those lessons, there's even a document here under Use Tools to support your student at home called a daily learning reflection, where your student can jot down what they learned and then possibly take notes on where they need more support. We have 3 different versions, depending on your student's age. They can be printed, or you can just have them jotted down on another sheet of paper. That's perfectly fine too. But I like to share this resource for families to support and connect what's happening at school to what is happening at home. So I want to pause for a moment because we just looked at the diagnostic assessment, and then we had a moment to look at the links here. And I want to make sure that there are no questions before we move a little bit forward in our presentation here.
I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody has a question, feel free to unmute yourself.
So far, so good.
You're doing a great job, Paige.
Thank you. Thank you. So if you do have a question, please don't hesitate to, if I'm talking or in the middle of presenting, just pop it in the chat, and one of the district partners will be able to assist you. So I want to talk a little bit more about the diagnostic. It is adaptive. So if it is your student's first time taking the diagnostic ever, they've never used iReady before, they're coming from another district, or maybe they're in kindergarten, it actually begins them with grade level content that is one grade level below. So our kindergarten students receive emerging kindergarten skills first. And then let's say a third grade student, they will begin seeing second grade skills first. Then based on their answers, our assessment will adapt up, making the skills more challenging, or it will adapt down, making the skills less challenging. From that information, we're able to figure out exactly where the student needs support. So since your students have taken multiple diagnostics, they have had multiple ending points each time they take a diagnostic. And what happens is, as they get the questions right, it adapts up, it adapts down when they get it wrong, and then we finally find out the student score. So some questions will be hard for your students, especially here at the middle and end of the year, because they've already taken a diagnostic. It is trying to challenge them to adapt up with the idea that they've been completing the personalized instruction lessons and they've been passing them at a pass rate that is really helping them understand those concepts that they may have forgotten. And then for our students who are already at proficiency, it may be new content. So the diagnostic assessment is going to try to adapt up. We want our students to be at proficiency or above. But then alternatively, as they begin to get questions wrong, some questions will be easier. So it is important to let your students know that the test is adaptive, meaning that it's going to change based on if they get the answers right. And if they're getting the answers right and the questions are getting harder, that's actually a really good thing. That means that your student is starting to receive lessons that may be right at or above their level, and it should be nearing the end of their assessment. But more importantly, we're finding out exactly where they are with their instructional level. And then they'll also have questions that are just right. And that is where we'll kind of start nearing the end of the assessment, and you'll see where our students are. So our teachers receive a diagnostic report that looks like this. In this report, on the left side, you may have seen something similar to this. I'm going to show you a family report in just a moment. But on the left side over here, I want to magnify really quickly. On the left side here, we have a sample student, a fifth grade student who in the beginning of the year scored grade 4 in the yellow. We like for our students to be in the yellow at the beginning of the year because they're bringing all of their content knowledge from the previous grade level. That's just one grade level below. They're ready for grade level instruction. The important part of this chart I would like for you to take a look at is the bar graph and the green area and the lines that we see in this green area. This solid green line here is a typical growth goal, what we would expect this student to grow on average. And we see from the beginning of the year, if this student starts at a 472 and earns a 490 by the end of the year, they will have met their typical growth goal. This green level above the chart indicates that it's on grade level, so that student will catch up to grade level by the end of the year. Then right in the middle of our lines here, kind of sandwiched in between, is a very dark green line, and that line is mid or above grade level. When a student surpasses that level on the diagnostic, it simply means that they have a strong understanding of grade level content, and they're likely to fare well on their state assessments as well. We like for our students to aim for the area in the green, of course, because for us, that means that they're at grade level proficiency or beyond. The dashed line that we see at the top is stretch growth. It is a more ambitious yet attainable goal to really help our students get past the level of just proficiency, but advanced proficiency. So we see here, our stretch growth goal is beyond mid or above grade level. And if a student earns their stretch growth goal, some of our students will be at advanced proficiency, meaning that they are faring well in their preparedness for the next grade level. The sample student that we're looking at here is not how all of our students look. The goals can change for each individual student, and they are different for each individual student. And for some of our students, it will be really close to being at that green on grade level. And for some of our students, it will take more than 1 year. But with your support at home, checking in on those lessons, we can really help them get there. At the bottom, I want to zoom in. We were just looking at a math report. I want to zoom into a reading report where we can see the same thing. Similar student, grade 5. We see here, alternatively, the typical growth goal won't catch us up to grade level. This solid line that we see here is not in the green area. While we still will celebrate the growth that the student has achieved, we know that this student may need additional support in the next school year to begin to move towards grade level proficiency. Here we see the stretch growth goal, the ambitious yet attainable goal, is the goal that will move the student actually into being on grade level. So that's why it's really important to check in with your students and see how they're doing working towards those typical and stretch growth goals. You can check in on those after each diagnostic. In between the diagnostic, you would just monitor the lessons. Ask them how they're doing on the lessons. Are they doing okay? Do they feel like the lessons are just right for them, that are helping them remember things that they might have forgotten? Or maybe if your student is advanced, they're seeing new content. And it's important to check in to make sure that they understand those more advanced topics. What we also see on this graph for reading is a very dark green bar right here in the middle that is much further along than our typical and stretch growth goals, meaning that this student would need to advance at least past the mid or above grade level to be having that strong understanding of grade level content. If they're below, it doesn't mean that they don't, but we know that if they're beyond, they have a much deeper understanding. The teachers use this report to guide their data chats with students, helping students move towards their goals for the year, and sometimes even short-term goals. And even beyond this report, just below at the bottom, teachers are able to select each of our instructional domains for reading and math, and they get a detailed report and a detailed resources for where each student is ready to begin instruction, and the teacher receives a mini lesson to teach that student.
Hi, Paige, may I interrupt you on this one real quick? Can you go back to the previous slide? There was a question from Helen Bacon, and she says, does mid-grade level refer to local or national averages or based on the list of skills?
That is a fantastic question. It is based on our national averages in our program. We have over 17 million students who use our program, and based on those averages that we have and norms that we have in our program, that is the number that is considered at mid or above grade level. However, we still do correspond our data and cut scores with state assessments. So I know that for us, that mid or above grade level corresponds with our state testing in California at being at proficient or advanced proficiency. So it is based on our internal data, but we do linking studies to correspond to other state assessments. That's a great question. Thank you. What we have here on the screen is a diagnostic results report for families. And this is a report that you may be a little bit more familiar with. And I want to zoom in here to point out, at this point, your report will look something like this. We won't see those typical and stretch growth goals on the family report, but we know that our teachers and our educators have access to those and have probably had conversations with our students around those goals. So while we won't see them on the family report, it's still important to just ask, what is your progress towards your growth goals for the year? For this report we're looking at, which you may see now at this point in the year, you will see 3 diagnostic bars, which indicate your student's progress on the diagnostic throughout the year. If your student just happened to rush on the diagnostic, it's a possibility that they may have more than 3 diagnostic test points. That just means that the teacher allowed them to retake the assessment, to give them another chance to try their best. What we're looking at is the first diagnostic in the fall, mid-year, and on this image here, we have that plus 14, and that means that the student grew 14 points. And then over here on the last bar for the end of the year assessment, we see 20 plus 28, indicating that the student grew a total of 28 points from the year. That is something to celebrate. Something else that I also noticed on this report is we see that green area, which is on grade level, and this student made enough progress to catch up to on grade level this year. In the family report, we will also not see the mid or above grade level line, but we know that we can aim towards getting at least deeper into this red level, which will let us know that the student is performing at an advanced level or proficient level in their grade level. Over off to the right, you'll see a comparison in the first column of the domains. The next two columns indicate the first diagnostic compared to the last diagnostic. So you'll see for overall, for reading, the student was approaching grade 5 for the first diagnostic. And now at the end of the year, this student is at grade 5. And then as I look down through each of these other domains, which are the reading instructional targets that the student, what the standards that the teachers use to drive their instruction, I can see where my student performed in each of those categories. What you also see here is your student's Lexile range. And your Lexile measure is pretty much your student's reading ability, and they get a score here. And there's a blue link here right off to the right that you can either type in or click on, where you can actually find a list of books that is aligned with your student's Lexile score. So you'll just need to remember or write down that number, and then also write down the Lexile range. And that Lexile range is just based on all the books that you'll see on the list, they have a Lexile number. And your student can read books anywhere in between that Lexile range. So if you're thinking of ways to support your student at home with reading, if you notice anything up here, you can go to the Lexile report document here and find a book. Or if you're just going to the library, you can ask the librarians to ask you to provide you with the Lexile measures or some Lexile indicators that might be available in the library. At the bottom of this report, we have some more details about how to discuss these results with your child and reach out to the teacher if you have any question. And then we have some key terms, just understanding some of our domains, scale scores, and what some of those rankings mean for our students. This report you may have seen before. Sometimes it is shared with families during conferences or maybe even during some student meetings. Alternatively, you may have seen this report as well as some teachers do share the results report. I want to talk a little bit about personalized instruction. As the students complete the diagnostic and we think about where they are and their growth, at this point in the year, the students are still able to access the personalized instruction lessons. The students are actually able to access the personalized instructions throughout the summer, almost until the end of June. When the school district begins to re-roster and prepare for the next school year, iReady will be unavailable. But if you would like your student to continue using it throughout the first couple of weeks of June, I would strongly encourage it so that students do not have any of that summer slip, although it is already anticipated. So the personalized instruction lessons, they're powerful online lessons that are self-paced. Your students receive these lessons after each diagnostic, and the teachers provide time in class, or they can also be completed at home. It is driven by the iReady diagnostic. What we're looking at here is what the teacher sees on a class report, where we can see the overall placement for the class, how the class is performing in each of those domains that I mentioned that drive teachers' instruction. And then below, we see a list of students and all of their instructional details related to the assessment, as well as their national norms. So we use the diagnostic assessment to create the personalized instruction lessons for the students. The lessons are automated and they're differentiated, meaning that students are not all doing the same lesson. Also, as students begin to get answers wrong, there are prompts within our dashboard that remind students of previous skills that they learned and how to solve the problem. Not only that, teachers are able to monitor these lessons. And in monitoring those lessons, they can see when students are struggling with lessons and where they may need some additional support. Not only that, although the lessons are tied to each student's individual goals, teachers can also assign lessons based on their current instruction to support students being able to access grade level instruction, whether it is advancing them to the next level or whether it is giving them a little bit of remediation for support. I want to pause a little bit as I have talked a little bit about the personalized instruction lessons and those lessons you may be seeing at home. So I want to take a moment to pause and see if there are any questions related to the lessons in the chat.
There was a question saying, based on your personal experience with this program, what would you say is the best approach to problem-solving areas students have difficulties with?
Ooh, So something you can do is you can preview the lesson with the student. If you are working with a student, I would pause them in the lesson. And let me navigate to the student dashboard. They have a table of contents at the bottom of their screen, and they can go backwards in the lesson to revisit something. So I'm going to open up a lesson here. This is what it looks like when your students log in. I've simply clicked reading. And over here on the left, we see the teacher assigned lessons. And then the My Path lessons are the lessons designed for the individual students. So the lesson will load. Student clicks the green arrow to enter the lesson.
Read this informational text.
So down
Can
here,
you find the word
let me
inside?
pause it. Down here at the bottom, we see the little arrows. The student can click back and forth through the lesson to go back. And then if you notice the title of the lesson all the way up here at the top, you happen to notice that the student is struggling, you can just jot this down and message to the teacher. And the teacher can either provide support in class or they can provide a resource for you to support at home. That was a great question. Let me see if there are any more. Oh, the lesson is very simple.
I just have a question. Someone, Mufada, did this, what was Paige just showed, did this answer your question? The question was, how are the lessons? I wasn't quite sure what was meant by that.
And I want to thank you for that one. I want to clarify, it says, how can I get a copy of the iReady diagnostic? I'm not sure if that is the actual diagnostic or the results. So the diagnostic assessment questions are not released. It's similar to the College Board assessment, PSAT. Releasing those questions would invalidate the integrity of our assessments if everyone had access to it. But your students are doing the lessons at home, and those lessons have very similar questions to the diagnostic. So if you like to see how the diagnostic is kind of built out and what it looks like, the best way to see that is to monitor or work with your students at home on the lessons.
Okay, we have another really good question here, and I'm going to read it. After diagnostic 2, my daughter is continuing where she left off with math lessons. She's third grade and set 4 lessons per week. So has recently started on the level D lessons. Can the diagnostic send you back to repeat old lessons?
The diagnostic path does not move backwards. So if she's receiving another lesson again, it's a possibility that she may not have passed it the first time. It will have the student repeat the lesson, or it is a possibility that the teacher has reassigned the lesson again. But the diagnostic path does not move backwards. It only moves forward. That was a fantastic question.
Can I just follow up on that? What I meant was it didn't change where she was in her automatically assigned lessons. She was mid one lesson on fractions and then carried on with that and then carried on going forward. So it doesn't appear. So the diagnostic could have placed her not where she's at in the lessons, but the lessons would keep moving up. Is that right?
Correct. And if she did not necessarily move forward on the path, that just means in that particular domain, she may not have improved enough to move forward on the path. Sometimes students kind of, when they take the diagnostic, they kind of waver there in the same area. And then at the end of the year, you see the growth happen. So it's a possibility that she just wasn't ready to move a little bit further along that path.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think my screen is still showing over here. You may have noticed that something popped up on my screen. So when students begin to be idle on the dashboard, our dashboard does prompt students. So if you're ever monitoring your students at home and you see this and then you see them hurry up and click, just check in with them and make sure that they are keeping the lesson going. The students are monitored not just on their lesson completion, but also time. We recommend about 45 minutes per week. So your students are working on it in class and a little bit more at work at home. Doesn't hurt, but if you see that pop up, that means that they are idling on the screen and they may not be working at the moment. Let's X this out. All right, I want to show the dashboard for the students. And what we're looking at on the screen is on the left side is the elementary age students. So that would be K2. And then on the right side of the screen, we see an upper grade students, grades 3rd and up. So in the K2 dashboard, we saw something similar on my previous screen. The students log in and they select reading or math. And at the top, you probably noticed they have coins. Students earn coins when they complete lessons, and they can spend those coins in a part of their dashboard called My Stuff, the little smiley face down here at the bottom. And there they can change their backgrounds, change their characters. And we also have something called diagnostic games, and they're called brain breaks. During the diagnostic, as students move through each portion of the test, they're allowed to have a brain break, as all students should have. And they're allowed to play those games even after the diagnostic under My Stuff. They're timed games, so they cannot play them forever. They're about 45 to 60 seconds, and the students must use the coins to play the games. So if they run out of coins, they can't play the games. But something to keep in mind is that if your student is getting on iReady at home, it's important for you to know that they're getting on the lessons because they know how to go to My Stuff, and technically they're still on iReady. They may not be working on the lessons though. So if you're working with your student at home, just check in and make sure you're looking at that screen every once in a while to make sure they're actually working on a lesson. There's nothing wrong with a little fun, but if you know that they're supposed to be working, just make sure you're monitoring. What we see on the left, as we saw before, teacher assigned lessons for our K2 students, and then our green lessons are the MyPath lessons. The MyPath are the personalized lessons that are sent out to each individual student based on their assessment. Students may have directives to work on either MyPath or teacher assigned lessons, depending on their teacher. But we know that the MyPath lessons, if they don't have homework or they don't have anything coming home with that they're supposed to be working on, the MyPath lesson is really going to help your student work towards their individual goal. So if they don't have homework, it's still a great way to help your student move towards grade level proficiency, and for some of our students, closing those gaps.
We have a couple of questions, Paige. Maybe you can
Yes, happy to pause.
So one was, what are the accommodations for iReady?
Absolutely. So in the dashboard, in the teacher dashboard, the teachers are able to turn on read aloud, where students, when they're working through the lesson, can click on the speakerphone to hear. There's also iReady lessons in Spanish and English. So depending on your student's teacher, they may be assigned lessons in Spanish if they need it. And then alternatively, they can be assigned in English as well. And then also for the diagnostic, the read aloud can also be turned on at the teacher level, but it will need to, of course, be approved through any of the student accommodation plans.
Okay. And another question is, if we notice that they are not moving forward in lessons, is there a recommendation for more support?
Absolutely. So first things first, I would like for you to kind of note down what the name of that lesson was. When we were on that other screen looking at that lesson, all the way up here at the top is where we see the title. And if you could jot that down, it's usually in the white bar at the top. I know it's probably small on my screen, but if you could jot that down and provide it to the teacher can provide you with resources that will align with supporting your student at home. As I mentioned, we have something in our dashboard called Tools for Instruction. They're quick mini lessons that the teacher can use, but they're also really easy to follow. And they're available in Spanish, I know in math. In reading, it may be a little limited, but it still can be translated. So if you're noticing the title of that lesson, jot it down, reach out to your teacher, and they can provide additional support. Alternatively, if you feel comfortable just looking up some resources online around that topic, you can more than welcome to do that as well. Are there any other questions here? Lupe, that is a district question. They're asking for the families report code. So I think that may be something you may receive from the district.
Yes, I had it pulled up and now I got to find it, but I'll put it in the chat, and we'll also give you the paperwork in Spanish and English on how to access it. But I'll put it in the chat as soon as I find it again.
Thank you so much. Hopping back over to our student dashboard, this is what your students are viewing at home, and we'll view the upper grades as well, and it looks very similar. If you are in your students' dashboard at home, I already pointed out the Family Center in the top right corner. We went there before. We saw a few resources. If you weren't able to join us, it will be shared with you later. If you are able to access it in the chat, I did share it. But your students are able to monitor their own progress. There's a little bit of student accountability in our dashboard. On the left side, or actually to navigate here, they would click the little arrow at the bottom of their dashboard that says My Progress. And when they click this button here, it opens up their stats. And on the left, it has their time on task. How much time have they spent on iReady this week? And of course, we recommend 30 to 45 minutes. That's why we see that this circle is lit up green. Students may continue working past that. It's not recommended to go beyond 60 minutes. If they do, it's okay, but it's just important to really ensure that they're passing those lessons and they're really understanding. It's not meant for them to just speed through the lessons. And then right next to our time on task, we see lessons passed for the year. Right now, we see 7 out of 8 lessons have been passed. Right here, you can check in and see how many lessons your students have been doing. At this point in the year, the students should have around 20 to 30 lessons, maybe even 40. If they have less than that, it's important to kind of support them at home with getting some of those lessons completed. And then on the last column, we have a reading streak. And what that is how many lessons they have passed in a row. How can you motivate your students at home? Well, you can ask them to pop this up at the end of the week. Have we met our iReady minutes? If we have our iReady minutes, we might have ice cream. Have we met our goals for the year? We see here for the school year, this bar goes all the way up to 30. So if your student has met any of these goals that are already marked in their dashboard, celebrate them, give them a reward. They've been working really hard on these lessons, and it's important for them to know that not just their teachers care about their educational success and know what's going on, you know a little bit about it too. And then over here on the right, you can also motivate them to get a certain number of lessons passed in a row. Maybe you start at just 5, maybe you push it to 10, maybe you push it to 20. But you can still use this window to see a little bit more about what your student is doing, how they are performing in the dashboard, and keeping them motivated even at home. Now looking at the 3A dashboard, it has some of the similar features, so I won't explain them all, but I will point them out. Here we have the 3.5 dashboard on the left, teacher assigned lessons, on the right, My Path, and that is under their to-do tab. And then we see the same image we saw for K2, monitoring those lessons. So even your middle school students, if they're a little reluctant to share what is happening at school, you can ask them to pop into, or even upper grades, pop into their iReady dashboard through Clever, click on My Progress, and do a quick check-in. I just explained each of these, but I want to make sure that you see the actual definition here for each of our labelings on the My Progress page. And at this point in the year would be a great time to check in and see how many lessons they passed this school year. Remember, we've got that big star at the top for 30. Celebrate them if they're 30. If they're not there, let's motivate them to get there. Because at this point in the year, they're not taking another diagnostic. Those lessons are still going to get them prepared for the next grade level. So while they may be finished with assessments or any of those other things, even during the summer, the lessons are still preparing them to be ready for their next grade level. I want to
Paige,
talk a
we
little.
had,
Yes.
sorry, we had someone that had their hand up and they were being really patient, so I just wanted to give them a quick chance.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see the hand.
No worries. I think it was Dara.
Bro, motherfuckers got butthurt so hard, bro.
Oh,
Hi, thank you. Hi,
sorry about that.
it's okay. I actually, and she answered my question. I put it in the chat instead.
Oh,
So,
okay. I'm
thank
sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
All righty, thank you for pausing me. And if there's any more, please don't hesitate. So in the dashboard, the last thing I want to point out is the completed work. So under my progress, we've already looked at time on task, lessons passed, and the reading streak. And we see we're looking at Carla here, who has 4,200 coins, has completed 105 lessons. So if you're seeing something like that for your student, definitely give them a round of applause and celebrate the progress that they've made this year. But right underneath that chart there, we can click on completed work. And when we click on completed work, we can then see a list of all the work that the student has completed this school year since the beginning of the year. So this list has a little scroll button here. You can drag it all the way down to look at their first diagnostic, their second diagnostic, even their last diagnostic if they've taken it. And in between all those diagnostic, you will see all of those lessons and the score that your student received. So if you're looking through this list and you notice that your student has failed some lessons or didn't fare as well, again, writing down the topic, either going over it with them yourself or reaching out to the teacher to see if there's something that they can share with you to help you support your student at home. If you see lots of hundreds, that's one way to motivate your students. Maybe you have an incentive at home. If they have a certain number of 100%, there's a reward for the month or for the week. Also, if you want to just look at any of the green checks, do they have, how many green checks do they have, and make them count the numbers. Something to note of concern is if you notice any dates that are for a completed work that are kind of stretched out, meaning that a student completed a lesson in December, but then they didn't complete another lesson until March. I can speak for my own family. My niece is one of those students. So we had a little chat not too long ago because I wanted to make sure that she is completing those lessons, but she kind of took a pause. So looking at the timeline of the lessons is also important because they need to be completing those lessons in between the diagnostic. And when they don't complete as many lessons, that's alternatively when we don't see as much growth from the students.
Hi, Paige, can I give some clarification on this?
Mm-hmm.
For this year, we have the reading personalized instruction it's in grade 6 and through 8th right now, because they won't see this in K through 5 because we have a new ELA program and we wanted teachers and students to really focus on that and everything that it has there. But what we're just talking about is the same stuff that you would see on the math side of it, because there is personalized learning for the math right now.
That is correct. Thank you so much for sharing that. This is just the image that we have for our presentation. I don't have a math image to show, but as she mentioned, it is exactly the same. You would just click on math in the top left corner here, and you would see the same results by clicking on my progress and then clicking on completed work as we saw on this screen before. So thank you for clarifying that. Under my stuff, I mentioned before where they can pick their buddies, backgrounds, and play games with their coins. And in grades 3+ they don't have the buddies, they have background themes and reward options. So what we see here is a K2 My Stuff screen, and then this is a 3-8 background screen. So I would like to pause because I want us to go back into the student dashboard and I want us to talk a little bit more about what the students can see in the dashboard and what you can see at home as a parent.
Are you sure you want to exit the lesson?
So I want to point out that the My Stuff tab is here. The Family Center is over here, but students also have a couple of the other tabs here at the bottom, and we'll get to them a little later. I just want to talk about them just in case you are already seeing them. They may have a dragon, which would be their fluency flight, which is just math fluency, something that they can practice at home, or they're more than likely doing it at school. And if you want them to do it at home, it's great practice. And then they also will have a little fish icon, which is learning games. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I wanted to make sure I talked about everything in the student dashboard before we navigated away from the dashboard. And now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the diagnostic. So a lot of times, I had this experience as a teacher. Parents want to know exactly what content their students can work on to be prepared for the diagnostic. But as I mentioned, the diagnostic is adaptive and the questions are not released. So we won't see the questions. However, it's important to let your students know those things I mentioned before. Number one, that the test will adapt to your answers, meaning that if you're getting them right, it's going to get harder. And if you're getting them wrong, then the test might get easier. But these points here I have on the screen are ways to prepare your students for the diagnostic. Let them know to take their time. They are going to see a variety of questions, and they're meant to challenge them to see if they can adapt up. And as they begin to answer, it will go up or down. But let them know to try their best. We're just trying to see exactly what they know, not what the class know, what that individual student know, and make sure they show their work on their problems for math. And for reading, reread the passages carefully, and then check your work before you go to the next question. In the student dashboard, we're seeing here again, they can select either subject, reading, or math. The green is going to start the diagnostic when they log in. They will not do this at home, but when they take it at school, it's important to remind them to wait for the teacher to tell them to click on the green diagnostic assessment. Sometimes the diagnostic can be pushed out by a certain date, but the class may not be taking the test that day. So hopefully there's communication that you will be aware that the assessment is going on. So you want to motivate the students, but then let them know to wait for their teacher to start the assessment. So at this point, we have a video, but we don't need to watch the video because this video is what students see at the first diagnostic, and your students have already seen that. What they see at the end is a confirmation screen, so they do not see a score for K2. However, grades 3rd through 8 do see a score. They do not see their ranking or placement. That is only available in the teacher dashboard. However, a lot of teachers have data chats with their students and tell them their students' performance and tell them their growth goal for the year. Those conversations can happen multiple times throughout the year. So the teacher can have a data chat in the beginning of the year, have one at mid-year to discuss their growth, and then one at the end of the year to talk about their growth overall and their preparedness for next year. So we looked at this report a little bit earlier. We saw the diagnostic results for student, which is the report that the teachers receive. And now we'll look a little bit closer at what the teachers can see as far as the resources at the bottom. As I mentioned before, at the bottom of this student report, we have each of those individual domains where the teacher can click on each of these individual domains and see exactly what the student can do and where the student is ready for more support. On the left, it will show the teacher what the student has been able to demonstrate on the diagnostic assessment. And then on the right, we'll see what are the next steps for instruction. We have this report for each individual student. So your teachers and educators are very informed on how to support your students. And not only do we give them the results, we actually give them the resources. This blue link here that says sequence of events, tools for instruction. This is a mini lesson. This is one of the documents that I mentioned could be shared with you if you're comfortable doing instruction at home with your student. They are easy to follow lessons that walk you through how to model the instruction for your student for reading and math. And as I mentioned, I know in math, it can be shared in Spanish. I want to zoom in a little bit here. Some of our lessons are about 10 to 15 minutes. It is not expected for you to do this exactly like a teacher. You can break it down and do one piece at a time if that is what you feel most comfortable doing. But these are the resources that the teachers may provide to you. Alternatively, teachers may have other resources that they may provide to you as well. But as far as our dashboard, this is something that the teachers do have access to share. But they do have other curriculums and resources that they may use as well. I want to pause. I see the chat is lighting up, and I want to make sure I answer these questions before we go to the next topic.
Okay, Paige, so we have a question. Does the diagnostic adapt on a question by question basis, or is it based on a block of questions?
Well, that's a fantastic question.
And
It
then
is
the second
based on a
part.
block of questions.
Okay.
So they get a series of maybe 2 to 3 questions within that particular area or topic, and then it will adapt based on their answers there. It has to be some consistency with that answering. That was a fantastic question.
And another part to that is, and are the different domains, geometry, number and operations, etc., assessed independently?
Correct. So the students work through each of those domains one at a time. And each time they finish a domain, that is when they see the brain break or the game that's in the middle of the assessment. So that is correct. They are assessed in isolation. There was one more question I saw here. Oh, maybe that was it there.
I think we were able to answer the other ones.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. So jumping into personalized instruction, again, looking at those lessons, we'll go in just a moment to preview one. These lessons are fun and interactive and keep your student engaged. And we know that these lessons provide explicit instruction. They are guided or independent practice, and they also include a short quiz. So again, your teachers and educators are informed on how the students did. They're not just working blindly. And the lessons are research-based on effective and online practices. They're built from California state standards, so they align with what the teachers are teaching, and then also where the student needs support, and then they're interactive. So what we have here are a couple of images of the phonics lessons for kindergarten, and then gradually increasing to 3rd grade, looking at vocabulary and word meanings. And then in grade 7, we see more complex text with citing informational text. So we see it starts off appropriate for our younger learners and then gradually increases for our older learners. And speaking of our older learners, if you have any students that may be in grades 6 through 8, they may be experiencing our new iReady Pro dashboard, which is a updated interface for our older students. It has more engaging pictures. We took away the cartoon characters. So some of our students are experiencing iReady Pro this year. Next year, all middle school 6th through 8th grade students will have our new interface, and they will be able to engage with the dashboard in that way. Nothing will change about their login. The lessons will still be assigned based on their need. We have just updated how those lessons look for the middle school students because, of course, we still want to be able to appeal to our older learners and make sure that they're not feeling as if they are working at a more immature or elementary level. Taking a look a little bit at math lessons. For the first image here, we have grade kindergarten, counting objects, and we see the characters there. Then grade 3, looking a little bit more at graphs, measurement, and data. And then grade 7, looking at the construction of triangles, looking at these lines, rays, shapes on the quadrant graph. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of resources available for our students who are English learners. And those lessons, those resources are available for teachers to use with students, and it generates high impact and it's easily accessible. It promotes access and engagement. So it's fun. It's the same lesson that students are seeing in English and Spanish. And it helps motivate students who have personal goals that are different from other learners. And then it also includes strategic scaffolds, which are little helping stair steps to help the student be able to understand the topic that they're looking at. So this is an example of a scaffold. The student viewed this first image on the left, and then on the right, there's a different explanation here, explaining and breaking down with the dashed lines to show who shaded a greater part of the square. So we're giving them like a little hint. And then here, we have some more Spanish support that is available to our students. This is a reading lesson. And while it is about understanding the parts of a word, we see that students are available to click Spanish and see the base word that will support their understanding of the English translation. And then we also see the same thing in vocabulary with the Spanish cognates. So I want to pause here just in case anyone has any other questions about the personalized instruction lessons or any other supports for our English language learners. All right, I think we're good to go. All right, the next thing we're going to hop into, actually, before we go to learning games, I want to pull up one of those lessons for us to preview. Let's click on a phonics lesson. So we're going to preview a phonics lesson.
Today, so glad that you're here. Welcome to the Space Lab. Do you want to steer?
It's a whole video. I'm
Read
just
this
going to skip it
informational text.
to honor our
Can
time.
you find the word volcanoes? Tap it. Now tap the word discover.
You got it.
This is a
The words
second
volcanoes
or third grade lesson.
have 3 syllables. Breaking a long word into chunks can help you read the word.
So we see students have the opportunity to engage by not just seeing visually appealing images, but then they also are clicking and engaging as well. And I like
you
to
sure
take
you
the
want to
moment to show you an image of an upper grades lesson. So just so we can see what it looks like for an older student. So if you give me a moment, I'm going to hop into a different student account. Just a moment. That was my error there. And we are entering an account for a 5th grade student. So we are going to now preview a 5th grade reading lesson.
Ask a Brain by Natalie Frederick and Laura Shanahan.
So you'll notice that students are immediately engaged into the lesson. They are required to click to start. And up here at the top is where we see the
Ask a Brain by Natalie Frederick
speaker
and Laura
button
Shanahan.
so that they can hear the reading.
Ask a Brain by Natalie Frederick and Laura Shanahan.
This student would need to have the accommodations turned on. The text could be read to them. That is one of the features that could be changed for the student. And there will be a speaker button right here by the text. The student can also turn it on themselves with audio support, audio descriptions, and text unlocking. So the student has the ability to access these features within the lesson themselves.
The brain is the most important part of the human body. Question: what is answer?
I just clicked on the blue vocabulary word. It's giving me more information about this word if I did not understand it, along with all of the other vocabulary words in the text, as well as clicking on the Spanish translation.
Are you sure you want to exit the lesson?
We just saw an elementary reading lesson and an upper grades reading lessons. Now I'm going to toggle to a math lesson. We'll stay in the 5th grade account now, and we'll look at a lesson here on understand fractions as division.
Here are today's learning targets. Understand a division problem as a fraction. Understand a fraction as a division problem. At a class picnic, Finn, Rita, and Marcus have 6 banana oat bars to share equally. Drag all the bars to share them equally.
So the student would need to drag each of these items here. See what happens if I get it wrong. Uh-oh.
Share all the bars so that each person gets the same amount.
A reminder to what the task is asking. And then also, let's see if I get it wrong again.
You can share the bars equally like this.
A model scaffold, as I mentioned before.
How many banana oat bars does each person get?
And of course, I would type in the answer here. Done. I'm gonna X out of this
Be sure
lesson
you
here.
put the
I want to point out that the way that the students are engaging with these lessons are very similar to how the assessment types look on their state assessment. So if you have a 3rd grade and up scholar and they are getting ready to take any of those high stakes assessments, they will be seeing similarities in the questions that they are doing on the lessons. I do want to quickly hop over to a lower grades math lessons just so you can see that. And this will be a 1st grade lesson.
choose a subject.
And we see the background has changed because we are now in a lower grade student. And let's
Start
click
lesson.
on this first teacher assigned lesson here.
You, I've got some new word problems for us to solve. Let's do it! Abby has 3 toy trucks. She gets 2 more trucks. Move the pictures to the words to show the story.
So we see on each of
Abby
our
has
prompts
3
here,
toy.
we have the speaker icons. The students are then expected to drag and drop. So if you know that you have some of our younger kiddos who are just learning how to use laptops, especially with the flat mouse pad, supporting them at home or even helping them, showing them how to do it. But iReady can also be accessed on iPad. So if your student is accessing on the iPad, they would just drag and drop here.
Nailed it! How many trucks does Abby have now?
The students are just getting more familiar with the dashboard,
Abby
clicking
has
to listen to the question, and then also clicking on the answer and clicking on the done button. And these are all things that the educators go over with them ahead of the diagnostic, but then they also encounter all of these things during the lessons.
Abby has.
So I am
Are you
going
sure
to
you
exit
want
the
to exit
lesson. And I want to pause because we just looked at a few lessons before we close out for our Q&A. I want to make sure before we go to our last topic, there are no questions about the lessons as we just previewed a few of them. All right,
I don't see anything else in the chat. So
okay, perfect.
Reading.
Now I want us to hop over to our presentation, and we're going to look at learning games. And learning games can be found in your student's dashboard right here at the bottom. It is in the same place. We are in a lower grade student account, but it is in the same place for our upper grade students. And these learning games are aligned to math skills. So if you click the question mark that is over top of the game, you can see which skills the games work on. So these are all math fluency games, a great way to reward your students at the end of the week if they've completed their time on the time bar under my progress, if they've had 30 lessons, or maybe you're just so interested about their iReady work that you want them to show you how to play. So the learning games are there They can be played at home. They don't count towards their iReady minutes, so they would need to be played outside of their time on the lessons. But they're a great way to really engage the students with their mathematic fluency. And then I do want to open up one of the games just so I can model that it is available in Spanish as well. And this screen is just loading. You see the bar here at the bottom. Click Hungry Fish. Over here in the right corner next to the gear, kind of like our settings gear, the students may toggle from English to Spanish. So they have the opportunity to do that in the dashboard by clicking on the gear. And then they have all different kinds of topics that they can choose, or they can do an introduction where they learn how to play, or they can return to learning games home here and choose another game. So the students can toggle on their own in the dashboard for their lessons, whether or not the read aloud feature is turned on. It is a feature that is turned on by the teacher, but the student controls it in the dashboard. Also, we saw closed captioning as well, as far as one of those accommodations that students might use. And then we also saw the opportunity to toggle to Spanish for our learning games. And then our math lessons are also available in Spanish that our teacher assigns. So the student wouldn't automatically receive it, the teacher would assign it. And that is based on whatever the educational plan that is in place for our English learners. Getting support is easy. Click. Let me get there. Here we go. Getting support is easy. I've already shared with you the link to the Family Center, where you have access to understand a little bit more about our curriculum, as well as some resources at home. I do want to share this Family Center link here, which is a little different from the Ready Classroom Mathematics Family Center. And our iReady partners, I want to point out that this is just the, in general, iReady Family Center. So it includes resources for reading and math. It is not just our math center. But I want to point out that on this one, we have some at-home data trackers right in the center of this page. You can open this up by clicking download, which I did share the link in the chat. And we have documents that you can use at home to help your student track their progress, or even if you are building an incentive at home around just student motivation at school, you can use one of these resources here as well. So thinking about supporting your students at home, there's three main things you can do. You can prepare, you can support, and you can celebrate. So when you prepare, you're explaining to your students what the diagnostic is. You have a good understanding now. Make a plan, listen to the teacher, and share. Support, you want to encourage, track, and discuss. And then you want to celebrate. So prepare at home. I have a couple of things on the screen that can help with them being ready at home, which you're probably very familiar with this at this point in the year, but really helping them focus on those lessons now until the end of the year, making sure that they're ready for the next grade level. Keeping them motivated, knowing now that you know how to check their iReady lessons. So now you might motivate them by challenging them to complete a certain number of time, a certain number of lessons, or maybe even having a lesson streak for the month of April. We're just 3 days in. So really keeping them motivated to the end of the year, you can definitely do that. And then help them track progress by using one of the resources that are on the Family Center to help your students. And then celebrate their progress. Reward their hard work. So in closing, the key takeaways from the diagnostic is that it informs your teacher, your student's teacher, on how to best support your student. You can motivate and encourage them to do their best, and then use all of the resources in the Family Center. And then as far as the personalized instruction, which are the lessons that your students are working on in between the diagnostic, it helps them be successful in the next diagnostic as well as successful in the next grade. And regularly check in. If you haven't checked in this school year, check in now. We're going into spring break. Maybe you just want to make sure they're ready for the end of the year. Maybe that is an incentive for spring break. and then celebrate where you've seen your student grow. Now we have time for Q&A. I know we've answered a couple of questions throughout the chat, and if anybody wants to come off mute to ask any more questions, please feel free to do so. Or you can pop some questions in the chat. Pausing and also making sure we didn't miss anything. It's a very good question in here around the time, and I want to point that out. We recommend 30 to 49 minutes a week per subject. So if you are in one of those upper grades that may be using reading, if they are doing the lessons, they would be expected to complete about 2 lessons per week. And that's for everybody. And we say that because about 49 minutes, one lesson is about 20 minutes, give or take. Some students, it could take longer. But if they're using it for the recommended time, 30 to 49 minutes, they probably will complete 2 lessons per week. So that's something you can also check in at home under the My Progress tab, and then clicking on completed work. And then I will share this presentation with our Pasadena partners, both in English and in Spanish, if it's needed. And then the last thing we have is an outcome self-check. Thinking about what our goals were for this session, I'll pause here. Hopefully you are leaving with a check in your mind for all of our outcomes here. The last thing I have to say is thank you. Thank you so much for showing up this evening to find out more about what your student is doing, collaborating with the district partners in the chat. I saw a lot of that going on. Continue the great work that you're doing as parents. If no one's told you thank you, I really appreciate you for being here with me this evening.
One more
Oh,
question, Paige. We got one last one.
Oh, did it just
iReady Classroom Mathematics access through the Family Center. Could you show us how to get there? Maybe not through their student dashboard, but maybe like how would they get there if they just wanted to get there and not have to
it would be the first link that I shared. Let me go up here. So I shared 2 links to a family center. That person may not have been in here for the first one.
Okay.
So the first one is gonna say Ready Classroom Central. That is the math one. I just popped it in the chat one more time. And then the general iReady for ELA and math was the iReady Central Family Center. So I popped both of them in there, and I will share them with the district afterwards, and they'll identify which resources, which they're both very valuable. One is tied to your students' math curriculum, and the other one is still tied to the iReady assessment, but it's not necessarily isolated to just math. It's reading and math.
Thank you, Paige. Really appreciate it.
Sorry, we have one more question that popped up.
Okay, that's good.
Paige, are you able to go over the slide that shows the 3 options for accommodations?
Correct. Let me see.
And then I just wanted to take this moment to also let everyone know I put a link in the chat. You're able to click on that link. The information that we just reviewed and the presentation and handouts and everything that was shared in the chat has not been uploaded just now. But if you give us until the end of day tomorrow, every single thing will be uploaded on there. So don't feel like you're maybe, the chat was very busy. So don't feel like you missed something. We will make sure that we capture all of that. And I will also put my email in the chat so that if you have any questions regarding maybe some of the information or would like something additional, you can reach out and I'd be happy to help send that over to you.
Thank you so much. I just popped up. I'm not sure if I had an explicit screen that listed all of the accommodations. I may have been in a student account. And I think that's what we are wanting to see. Let's see, does I still have it up? Let me go to a student account. So what I was
To
inside,
kickstart lesson.
I was inside of a lesson. And when I clicked on the lesson, oh, this is math. Let me go to reading. Actually, I
Math.
have to be an
Log
older
out.
student.
Start lesson.
I need to
Log
go to an upper students class. I know exactly, you want me to show you how to do the accommodations in the student dashboard. Just give me one moment so I can log into the other student account. I wasn't able to model this in the lower grades account because it was a letter lesson and there wasn't any way to do the text to speech. Everything is reading to them at that level. So I'm now in the lesson that is for upper grades, for grades second, third, and up. If depending on what they're working on, if it's a
Ask a
text,
Brain
they
by
will
Natalie
have
Frederick and Laura Shanahan.
they will have some of these accommodations. So at the top here, we see the speaker, but down here in the bottom right corner, oh, I zoomed in too far. We have a little gear next to the
Tap
question
the
mark.
go button to start reading.
And the question mark is telling them how to use the program, but the gear is where we see those accommodations. So the student can turn on closed captions, audio support, text unlocking. Text unlocking is a feature that it pretty much pauses the students from skipping through the text. It waits a little bit of time before they can click the green arrow to continue through the text. And then also audio descriptions. So that would be if a student is working in a lesson that it may be a reading topic where they have to looking at a passage. Some of the other lessons may also include these settings, but some of our K2 lessons are already read aloud and have some of these features taught on. But if you notice that gear down in the bottom of your student's lesson screen, these accommodations will be available to them. I think that was... Oh, the video. Okay, it could be the video, but I'm going to share the presentation with our Pasadena partners, and that video can be viewed from a public site. So if you want to preview that video again for those accommodations, I can definitely share that. All right, I think that might have been our last question. Again, if you, Helen, if you want to enable that text skipping, just check in if your student is working at home. See if you see that gear at the bottom of the screen. And thank you all. I think that's all I have for this evening. If there are no other questions, we are finishing with 4 minutes to spare.
Yes, we thank you for coming. I hope this was very valuable for you. Appreciate the time that you've taken to be here. Nancy, would you like to close us out? Anything else you'd like to say?
No, thank you so much, Paige. Thank you, Dr. Nayo. I hope everybody found the information super useful. If you have any questions or, like I said, or need any other further information, please feel free to email me. I'd be happy to gather those items for you and send them to you directly. If not, if you'd like to check the link that I posted in the chat by tomorrow afternoon, evening, like 3, 4 o'clock, everything should be uploaded there. And you're able to preview not just that presentation, but all of our past presentations that we've done, not just with iReady, but also with other organizations. So thank you everyone for joining us. And I hope everyone has a great night. Bye.